Good morning, dear beloved Sangha. Good morning, Upper Hamlet. And good morning, Lower Hamlet and New Hamlet, and everyone who's joining us online. My name is Sister True Dedication, and I'm sitting here with Sister Dao Nghiêm and Brother Phap Bieu. We represent 3 countries, the UK, France, and Italy. And this morning we've been invited to share a little bit in hopefully a relaxed way, with a little bit of interaction if we can manage it, some of our practice during our 3 months retreat. Every year in Plum Village we have 90 days of continuous practice. We try our best, including the practice of rest when we can. And this practice dates from the time of the Buddha. And our intention is to go deep inside, to really develop our own energy of mindfulness, and also to come close together as a community, as a fourfold Sangha. And so this is also a time of building community, cultivating togetherness. And we know that many of the problems that we know are there in the world can be addressed by simple living, and simple living in community, and learning how to live in harmony with others, including those who are quite different from ourselves. And so this is what we practice together, and we feel it quite strongly in our 90-day retreat. How can we live together in harmony? And we may think, oh, Plum Village is a bubble. Plum Village is definitely a bubble right now. We're literally a bubble in the pandemic. We don't have any coming in or going out. But in many ways, we're also a microcosm of the world. It's not that Plum Village is somehow separated or cut off from everything that happens in the world. We're very connected to all our families and loved ones outside, beyond the boundaries of our Rains retreat, our 90-day retreat. And we're also keenly connected to our international community and everything that is happening in the world. And so when we walk along the beautiful paths here, we walk with the world, with our families and with our loved ones. When we sit in meditation in these beautiful meditation halls, we also sit with the world. But we very much sit with ourselves as well. And we learn in these 3 months to really face the challenge of arriving, of coming home into our body and into the present moment with everything that is going on. Mm. Mm. And it can seem that whenever we come into the meditation hall, or for those of us at home, whenever we try our best to sit on our meditation cushion, we bring the whole rest of the day with us into that moment. And we may feel that somehow we have to solve the challenges and problems of the day in that moment when we're sitting on our cushion. And many of the things that the world is going through right now, we may feel powerless to be able to help. But somehow we learn, and our teacher Thai has taught us that there's a deep connection between what we each can do in our own lives and on our own cushion and with our own experience of the present moment. There's something we can do. We have a kind of sovereignty about how we will respond to the situation in the world, or the difficulties in our daily life, or suffering and injustice that we see. We can choose how to respond, and we can respond with a quality of presence and with a quality of freedom. We can choose how to respond. But we can only do that if we're deeply rooted in the present moment, if we can really arrive into ourselves to understand how we are reacting. When we face difficult moments that we perceive through news or through the internet, as well as difficult moments with the people we live with, in our families, in our households. Plum Village is like a giant household, a very big household. And when we experience difficulties, our first place of practice is to generate an energy of mindfulness to help hold, to help balance whatever is going on. And in the Plum Village tradition, our practice is immediate and embodied. So our first response is always to come back, to discover where our breathing is and how our breathing is. What has our breathing and the quality of our breath got to tell us about how we're doing in this very moment, in this Sunday morning? What has our breath got to tell us? And we know that our breath is an embodied breath. So if our breath is long or short, that has something to tell us about how settled we are, or how distracted or unsettled, restless we may be. And already by being with our breathing and being with our body, however it is our first kind of responsibility as a practitioner, our first door of freedom. There is something we can do to take care of how we are responding to what is going on. This morning in Upper Hamlet there is a beautiful winter light. The last leaves are hanging on the maple trees. The oaks are turning a beautiful golden orange. And have we been available this morning to soak in what is immediately available to us? Or have we also been carrying other things along the way? So our practice of coming back to our breathing and enjoying our steps on the damp grass, these are practices that help us kind of see where we're at and help ground us. In a time when it seems like there's a lot going on, it can sometimes seem like following our breathing or coming back to our body is an escape from the real problems. But it's not so much a shutting out or cutting off, but it's a plugging in. We plug into this data and this information that is there in our body, in the quality of our breath, and in the quality of the present moment that is being offered to us, whether we are available to it or not. Sometimes I'm one of the monastics that's a little bit more in touch with some of our friends and colleagues working outside. And sometimes people ask, oh, it must be very easy for you in Plum Village to be in lockdown. It must be very easy to survive the pandemic as a community. Actually, the truth is that in my experience, we've also had a lot of challenges to face. It's not the case that we have been unaffected. For one, we can't receive our friends from all over the world. So there's a kind of flow. There's a flow in Plum Village. Every year we might receive 10,000 people. So in 2020, I think we were only able to open for 1 month. So we received a few hundred or 1,000, but there's 9,000 of you that we missed. And we feel that. That's also how the world comes into us here. And at least in the period of confinement and lockdown in France, we don't get to have our days of mindfulness. And that's a kind of a Sangha building pulse that we also really miss. All the Sangha neurons connecting to each other, supporting each other, sharing about our practice, and our projects to share mindfulness with one another and with the world. So we have also been in a process of adaptation, responding to a situation we don't necessarily want or like. And so as an organism, we are doing everything we can to find creative new solutions. We're learning how to offer online retreats and become proficient in Zoom and live streaming and camera work and everything else. So we're also in a rapid process of adaptation as a community, and that also takes time and that takes energy. Tai, he always encouraged us to build Sangha, and I remember one elder saying, I'm not sure if build is the right word. How do you build Sangha? Is it something you construct? And I often think about that. How do we build a community? And another elder last year offered us the image of a forest. That the Sangha is like a forest that we cultivate. And for those of us who have been reading some of the wonderful new books about trees and forests, there are many researchers and writers who have written wonderful things so we can understand more deeply the life of a forest and of a tree and how complex it is and how creative and how busy and active a forest is. So it's not that in lockdown here we've been sitting doing nothing. I mean, I think twice a day for 30 minutes we have a chance to sit and do nothing. But we have been a Sangha, actively Sangha-ing. It's almost as though Sangha is a verb. You know, we say that forests are foresting, and we can say that our Sangha has been Sangha-ing. We've been taking care of one another, learning from one another, listening to one another, supporting each other on our path of healing, of discovery. Who are we? Where are we going? What are we doing? And what are we doing together? And we've been doing that these last 2.5 months as a community. Our Sangha is a verb. Sangha, Sangha-ing. I don't know how that translates in French. Sorry to the translators. And one phrase I love very much from Thai is he said that we build Sangha, or we cultivate Sangha, not in order to be a leader of that Sangha. And this may also apply to those of us who have been building Sanghas, local Sanghas in our towns or cities around the world. We don't cultivate Sangha to be a leader of that Sangha, to have a Sangha around us. We cultivate Sangha to have a Sangha forest to take refuge in. So we're cultivating this very complex organism that we ourselves can also take refuge in, be nourished by, explore and learn from. And so this morning, Brother Phap Bieu and Sister Dao Nghiêm will also share a little bit about their experience of Sangha life over these past few months. So maybe we can have a sound of the bell, and then Brother Phap Bieu can share a little bit. And as we listen to the sound of the bell, let us empower ourselves with really coming back to our breath in this moment, and see what our breath has to tell us this morning. A moment to step inside and really listen and be with ourselves and whatever is going on, and accepting it just as it is.
Dear Thai, dear community, dear brothers and sisters, just now Sister Nghiêm started to share in talking about community and Sangha life and community living, and this is also a topic that I enjoy very much sharing about. This has been definitely the main, one of the main things that I've been working in the past decade or so. And I've been working it both because of the inspiration I had at some points of joining the community and living community life, but also because of the difficulties that I encountered in community life. And therefore is the first thing that comes to mind sometimes when we talk about community life is, why do we put ourselves through it? You know, why do we have to do it? You know, we are a meditation hall full of very intelligent people. We could have our own apartment, have our own job, have everything the way we like it, and have to choose everything that is around ourselves so that we like it, we enjoy it, it's the way we want it to be. And yet we put ourselves in an environment where control becomes some sort of absurd thing that we can never reach or achieve. We cannot control how the Sangha is going to look like. We cannot control what's going to be for lunch, you know, and we can hardly control who we're going to choose to be in a room together, because the room choosing day is, you know, it's It's a very dynamic day. You know, we might end up in a room that we actually don't really feel so connected with, you know. And our brother likes to sleep with the window open, and we like the window closed. And there's a whole range of issues that we meet by starting to live together. But there is one that I feel is even more important than all these little details, and I find it's something along the lines of social pressure. You know, I feel when we have a group of human beings living together in one place, doing the same thing, agreeing on some sort of code of living, how we're going to live together. Well, there is bound to be some degree of social pressure, you know, and through the years I understood that actually there's not really, doesn't have forcibly to be wrong. You know, there's an aspect in that is actually quite interesting, and to me this is very much revealed when we think of what could be the opposite of social pressure. And this is my call, you might have a different opinion, but I think it's something along the lines of social anxiety. You know, when the pressure is no longer there, and then we start being very anxious about what do the people think of me, or you know, of how do I reach out, how do I encounter people. And in our normal lives, with a job, with a family, with our little apartment, we might receive very little social pressure. Nobody forces us to do something. Well, maybe when we go to work in our job, we can't really control conditions around ourselves so much. But everything else, you know, everything that we can control, we will build in such a way that it will just reflect our mind, reflect what we feel comfortable with, and so. Once we feel we don't feel a certain kind of amount I call it social pressure, but it might be a little bit misleading, you know. But I see it also as something that can be seen from a different perspective, basically. And once that is totally missing, then there is also something missing in our life. There is some feeling of lack of connection. Some feeling of lack of interaction with other people, and some feeling of loneliness, some separation. And it's very interesting to understand and to see and to explore the dynamics of all these different experiences that we have in our life. But particularly in Sangha life, in community life, there is an aspect of collective, of what we choose to do together. And so in the morning, when we wake up, we might feel a little bit tired and we might want to stay in bed. And yet, even if the people in our room don't judge us for that and they're fine with it, there is still an element of social pressure within ourselves, because we judge ourselves for staying there. We cannot enjoy that so much. And so something feels like, okay, I'll just wake up and I go. And I think I struggled a lot with that principle. For many years I felt like, well, there is a lack of freedom in this. Why can't I choose what I want to do? Why can't I choose, this morning I want to wake up at 10. This morning I don't want to go sitting. I want to do something else. And so a lot of my journey into the practice has been finding a way to understand this principle. And it's very obvious that the sitting meditation is there at 5:30 or at 6, and that is kind of better if we are on a cushion at that point, and that is very much encouraged in the community. That is something that we sort of feel bound to fulfill as our responsibility as a practitioner and as a member of the community. And this really messed in my mind with my concept of freedom, with the concept of freedom that was transmitted to me as a young person, as a young adult, as a young teenager in my society. and very much equating freedom to the capacity to choose what I want, which is very interesting. That very, it seems that that's what our society is offering, but it's not quite like that. It's kind of what we are told is going to be. Then we find ourselves cruising through our lives. It never quite gets to that point in which we can choose all the conditions, or choose everything we like. And sometimes when we actually get to that point, we have enough material capacity, enough free time, anything, enough condition to do that, then we get a little bit messed up also, because it turns out that it's not forcibly a very good thing either. And so I have been reflecting a little bit on the concept of freedom, of why do I choose to be with these conditions. And I think to make it sustainable, at some point we need to choose to be here. We need to really choose. The moment we come to a community, there is an aspect of aspiration and falling in love. And that's very easy. Our consciousness is designed to fall in love, right? And to kind of find something beautiful, find something shiny, find someone beautiful, and just wanting to embrace that situation with your whole self. And our consciousness is also designed at some point to fall out of love, and to want to move on to the next thing. And that is what becomes very interesting in the kind of conditions that we put around ourselves in community life. Because the schedule, community life, and the general collective energy of a monastery, of a practice center, does not change that much. Many things have changed in Plum Village. People, Dharma teachers, novices, lay people, everything has changed. Buildings. Cats, yeah, lots of cats. When I was here as a novice, this meditation hall was only half this big. So here we would be sitting next by the shoe rack, something like that. And so we see this extremely impermanent aspect. But actually, I have to say that my life and my schedule haven't changed very much. I have been doing pretty much the same things for all the past 10 years. I've walked from the residence to the meditation hall, sat down to listen to a Dharma talk. I went to Dharma sharing, to share the practice with my fellow brothers and sisters. I went to cook, I went to work outside in the forest, and I did all these things, and I still do all these things. And I found that slowly, once I kind of fell out of love with my initial kind of motivation for being a monk and for joining a community, and that kind of fire that used to be very powerful, very compelling kind of calling inside of myself, sort of slowed down a little bit, allowing maybe some seeds of doubt come up. What am I doing here? I could be doing something else. I could be running after that person. I could be, running after that career. I slowly noticed that I began to I want to say I began to really love this kind of lifestyle. The simplicity of having a kind of lifestyle that keeps me in touch with reality, keeps me in touch with myself, and does not allow my mind to run too far away, and my mind, I hope your mind is the same, but this is definitely what I experience is that it's so much capable of creating worlds and stories and projecting huge, castles of ideas into the future. And I can see myself being a rock star, being anything you like. I used to be, as a teenager, I used to play in a rock band. And that was very, very powerful, So when you play, as a teenager in a rock band, you don't just want to play, you want to be a rock star. You want to be there in front of 10,000 people and play your guitar and feel like, yeah, this is, it's me, I'm up here, I made it. I no longer want to be a rock star, I have to be honest. But actually that didn't really change. And then I started, then I got into studying Chinese at some point, and then I wanted to be like some sort of Chinese scholar and just know everything about things. And whatever, I built so many stories and so many homes for myself. Sometime in the Dhammapada, the Buddha calls it a home. Say, this is the builder. I built for myself so many castles, so many homes. And then I have to fit in that home. And when I built myself a home like that, I need to put so much energy in it that I start getting quite attached to it. And the question, do I really like this home or not? It kind of stops. I stopped wanting to look at that because I had to sacrifice so much. And I stopped listening to myself. I stopped just listening. I stopped knowing who I am and where I stand. I remember one of the kind of awakening moment of my late teenage was that at some point I signed up for a conservatory, so I didn't only do rock music. For the record, I also played classical guitar, and I did a sort of I played a piece in a concert that it was organized by my school, and there were several hundred people in a big church in my city, and when I came out of it, there was a guitar teacher that walked up to me and said, "Wow, you're really good." And at that moment, I felt that the separation between myself and what he was saying. I felt like I blamed myself so much, and I still can feel waves of like shame for like playing so badly, and for judging myself, saying, "Oh, that was good enough," and being really, really harsh on myself. And I suddenly realized, actually, I just don't like to perform. This is not my thing, And I spent years and years kind of thinking that that's what I want to do, and suddenly I realized, no, not really. Coming back to community life, one thing that I appreciate, particularly in Plum Village, is that there is no boss, and that there is no particular goal that we need to achieve. That was really difficult for me. I don't know for you sisters, but for me it was really difficult at the beginning. The year I came in my first year as a novice, we had a lamp transmission, and I wrote at least 3 transmission gathas for myself, just to have them ready. I just felt these waves of inspiration, and I said, "Oh, I get the Dharma, I'm ready." Now I laugh at myself, but that was the same teenager that was thinking of becoming a rock star. Now he wanted to become a Dharma teacher, and be there in front of the Sangha and hold a microphone and be talking. And now I'm talking, and yesterday I was like, "Oh my God, I really wish I didn't have to come up here to share." But something very beautiful that Thai did, and for me this is one of the greatest gifts that Thai gave us, is that from the moment you come to Plum Village, you are told you are enough, you are okay the way you are. It's totally fine for you to be like that. And awakening is only something that makes sense within that framework. Practice, transformation only makes sense if you keep being yourself, if you keep listening to yourself. Because if you throw that aside and try to build yourself a future and start sacrificing free time and working meditations and sitting meditation, to do something, to build a thing, to build another home for yourself. Well, then eventually you find yourself up there, you find yourself holding a microphone, and you're like, this is not quite the way I thought it would be. I thought this would make me happy, I thought this would give me confidence. Suddenly, I'm up there and I look confident. And you can look confident actually, you can make yourself look quite confident. And that can become another trap. And the beautiful thing is that there's something about our lifestyle, something about the way Thai built this community, the fact that we are told, it's already enough, you don't need to do anything else. Just practice, just be with it, and learn and explore. And I like this much more nowadays. I feel like this is something that really nourishes me in my monastic path. I would say this is really what I want to do. So the intention in my practice and my aspiration really shifted from wanting to build something to actually wanting to understand. And to be honest, I don't understand enough. There is many things I don't know about myself, and many things I don't know about the people surrounding me, and that makes my life so rich. Sometimes rich of all sorts of things, but very rich. Sometimes it's also some emotion, sometimes it's also a bit of sadness, sometimes it's a bit of anger, but all of this phenomena, they become so interesting when you put them through the light of your mindfulness, of your meditation. They just become the only one thing that you would like to do with your life. And I'm going to finish, Sister. Yeah, don't worry. Before. Okay, I just want to say one last thing, is that I forgot what I wanted to say. Question?
So, you said that you don't want to be a rock star, right? Okay. And you don't want to be a Chinese scholar?
No.
Okay. And you don't want to perform? And you no longer have a goal?
Oh.
But you still have an aspiration, and what you're sharing now about understanding yourself and the people around you, would you say that your aspiration has now changed with this experience of living in community? And can you have a sense of what your path or your journey ahead looks like? So it's not exactly a goal, but maybe it's a direction?
Yeah. Yes, I have to say that I am exploring my aspiration, and I am understanding it every day. I don't know what my aspiration is, but what I do know is that we are offered many aspirations. When I read the Diamond Sutra, we're told that the aspiration of a true bodhisattva is to help all living beings. Now, I find it hard to say I want to help all living beings, but there's something I find deeply inspiring about that, and something that touches me very deeply. And I don't know if I'm ready and I'm able to embrace that, but there's an aspect of it that I explore every day. During the past 2 weeks, I've explored my aspiration in a very difficult and different condition, and it was there. It was there to under some forms. Not as usual, but it was very interesting. It was, something that still connected me and still made me feel I'm really doing what I want to do. And that's how I understand it. So I feel that the way I gauge if I'm following my aspiration or not, if I'm understanding it, do you feel that you're living the life you would want to be? And if the answer is yes, then somewhat I think I am in line with it. If the answer is no, then I know that there is something I need to look at, and maybe I'm not really listening to what my aspiration is telling me to do. So I find it very hard to define it. What is it? Yeah, we call it bodhicitta, and I totally understand why bodhicitta is such a smoky concept. Our teacher says it's the mind of love, easy. And then you read lots of other teachers and they say, oh, this is something completely different. And you're like, is that the same word? Are they talking about the same thing? I understand that it's actually, it has to do with something really alive in you, so it can't be defined, clear-cut, chunk. This is it. It has to be much more flexible than that, much more organic.
And so I have one curiosity. So things have evolved for you since you've been on this path, and let's just take the last few months, right? Has there been anything unexpected on your path? Have you discovered something that you didn't know 10 weeks ago? What has been your fruit of your rains retreat so far?
Yeah, I think I'll be more fit to reply to this question in a few months. You know, I see the processing. I see that change. I feel there has been some change, but normally the way my mind works and the way my process of practice has been, I understand what the changes has been. A few months later, I suddenly saw something, what has shifted in my life. Right now, when the changes just happen, or when it is still happening, it's very hard for me to guess, or to feel, or to put words on it, because I think my language is inappropriate. You know, when I change, my mind changes, my way of thinking change, my words change, and so I feel the way my mind is still working is unfit to describe the way I am. You know, I have one experience that describes this very well. Is, you know, sometime when you, as an artist, as a musician, you play and you're quite satisfied with what you play, and then suddenly one day you play the same way and you don't like it anymore, and you feel really it's all bad, it's horrible, like, and the reality of it, and this I have to be very grateful. Brother Phap, one time one of my older Italian brothers, he shared this with me in a way that really struck me, because it really hit on an experience that I do have. Is that actually it's not that you're playing worse, but it's just that your eyes and your ears have developed, and you've grown, and your hand cannot catch up with it yet. So that is a moment of growth in which actually you need to develop your hands, you need to develop your skills so that you catch up with how your mind and your capacity of understanding has changed. But in the moment of change, it actually, I feel it is bound to feel a little bit uneasy and unpleasant. Because, you know, your mind has grown and your body is still kind of this little thing. It goes like, wow, that looks very big. Yeah, that's how I understand my practice, and how I often feel in moments of change and of shift in my perception, in my meditation practice, also in my community living.
Thank you, dear brother.
Dear respected Thai and dear community, so, thank you so much, Brother Bieu and Sister Nghiêm. It's wonderful to listen to you and to be here this morning in this hall. And yeah, I must say that this morning I woke up quite early and telling myself, oh, I have nothing to share. So I just want to share that. So it was quite a moment of just accepting whatever was there, just breathing with it, embracing it, and just saying, it's all right, it's okay. I just go and sit here, and it's okay. But being here and listening to Bieu and Sister Nghiêm, then I remember a beautiful trip that we did 3 years ago in India with Bieu. And so it's like just sitting here, it reminded me some question and answer when we were sitting in one of the places in India. And other event was a beautiful pilgrimage that we had the chance to do. So as part of our community life as well, that we travel together. And during this past year, we didn't travel so much, but outside of Plum Village. And with Sister Nghiêm, that like listening to you, then I somehow the image of, I think it was Cambridge when we went on the boat. It's not boat. I don't remember how that it's called. What the name? Punt. So we were punting. Yeah, that's flat boat, and you go on the canal in this university. So these images were coming to me as I was sitting here. I was listening, but at the same time I had images in my mind. But so this 3 months, this 2 months and a half, past 2 months and a half. It's been quite a journey for us here in Plum Village, and for me. And one thing that I do, which helped me a lot, is journaling. You say journaling, and I have quite a bit of a box full of journal because I have a daughter. I was married before I became a nun, so I have a daughter. She's 37 now. And she doesn't want me to throw away my journal. She wants to have them later on. So, but sometimes what I do is I look back in some of my journal just to see how is it. Do I have the same mental formation? Do I have the same emotion difficulty? And so lately I just I didn't do that for some time, but lately I just pulled a journal. I pulled a journal from 2003, and because I wanted to read, we had one of our monastic sisters who passed away a few days ago, and I just wanted to read about the same period of time, what was happening in 2003, because Sister Nghiêm, who passed away, and myself, we ordained in 2003. So she ordained in July, I ordained in October. And what was very interesting, because I just opened the journal in random, and the day that I was reading on this journal was, we went out together with Sister Nghiêm to Bergerac, and we had tea and cookies, and we did some errands, and so it was like a little comment on dit clin d'œil? Like twinkling of the eye, like that she was giving me, saying a wink of the eye, saying, I'm still here. That was very wonderful. But what I did too, what was at the page of my journal, was a feedback. Like every year during our 3 months retreat, at the end of our 3 months retreat, we have what we call in our Plum Village language, shining light, but it's like feedback about our practice. So into the winter 2003-2004, at the end, then I received a letter. So and I had some nice, nice feedback, and some feedback to help me with my practice. And so it's quite good to read. Well, it was 17 years ago. and to see if it's still here. So I just want to say a few words. So maybe you will recognize yourself too in what I received. But so I received nice, but I want to read the thing which go, ooh. And I know when I read this letter and when I received the feedback, I was not smiling and saying, oh, it's all right, it's okay. Now it really kind of hurt because it's like you see yourself. But I remember coming to Plum Village, I really, what's one of the things that in Thai's teaching and the community teaching was to be able to see aspect of myself that I knew was something that I couldn't understand about myself, and I needed people to tell me. So I was very happy to know, even if it was a bit painful. So it's to my encouragement was to promote better communication, understanding and trust of each other. Please learn to express yourself more, whether it is joyful or painful. There is other thing. And then do train yourself to consistently come back to your own island in order to be in touch with good seeds within. And learn to deepen your practice of solitude in all conditions. To help minimize misunderstanding, invest more time in the practice of stopping in order to nourish your stability and clarity before taking time to look deeper into your irritation. And then the thing which was quite a powerful thing which was told to me that I really reflected deeply is it is perceived in you a tendency to place people into a preconceived box. So it's to place ourselves and other people in a preconceived box. And please allow yourself to be fresh, lighter, and to give yourself as well as others more space. Because I had idea of how people should be. Not me, but how they should be. And so it was very, very, very good. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you. And one thing that in my practice that really touched me in our teacher, really guide me, that's something that I aspire to be able to have is this inner silence. Like Thai really, when we were close to Thai, this inner silence that our teacher had, which is in this inner silence is embracing. You can really feel the deep compassion which is there. So and I know that, for example, being the witness of our sister process of our suffering and slowly the death coming, to witness, and in order for me to be able to do that, to be peaceful and to embrace whatever was happening in her and in myself, was to stop, to come back to my breath, to embrace what was there in me and in her, and to be able to offer care and presence. I look at my little note that I wrote. The other thing that I could see in my practice during these years, is the first noble truth is about suffering, because what I understood that I hear, okay, I'm suffering, I have this difficulty, but what I saw is that for many years I didn't accept that I had suffering within myself, whatever form the suffering was. It could be anger, sadness, despair, doubt, whatever it was. And it was like to understand that in fact the first noble truth is not to understand intellectually, but to really feel, go deep down inside myself. Yes, there is suffering in myself. Yes, I do have anger. Yes, there is anger there. Yes, there is sadness there. And when I recognize it and made space for it, then it could circulate. And so was to accept that in me and accept that in other people. That yes, there is suffering. And there is this mantra that our teacher say, I am here for you. So it's for me it's like it's about the suffering too. I am here for you, my deep the suffering that I have, or for the presence. Maybe I ask Sister Nghiêm to ask me questions.
Well, I want to hear a little bit more about this being with suffering. So, like you say, with the energy of mindfulness, we recognize, suffering is there, so when we say suffering in Plum Village, we mean ill-being or ill-ease or discomfort or pain that could be emotional or physical. And I don't know for you, but at least for me, it's a bit like touching like a hot element, like the stove. As soon as I see sufferings there, it's like, ouch, and my mind and my awareness, I immediately want to go somewhere else. So what is your practice when you recognize that the suffering is there? How do you guide yourself to be with it, and what kind of energy do you bring to being with it, and how do you use your body or your breath or your mind at that moment?
But I had to recognize that my tendency was to not wanted it to be to be there. So like maybe push it away or not accepting it or not wanted to see it. So it was really so it was easy for me to sit in meditation, for example, and find peace in the concentration, but in fact not looking really deeply what was happening within myself. So I was finding, but I had to go to the stage of coming back to peace, and then being ready to look into what was happening within myself. So to go to the step first to calm myself, like in a storm, to come back to the breath, be quiet, maybe practicing walking meditation, and then look deeply what is coming up, what is there, opening myself to it, and caring for it. And as I say, I journaling, like writing, because my mind was making stories and justification. This situation or this was happening, and but not really returning. There is suffering there, simply. So it was like a lot of story going on instead of saying, oh, there is deep sadness there. That's it. And then it changed. It made space instead of finding a lot of stories to justify. I don't know if it's clear, but to put it in writing, then it was, my mind was kind of putting it down, releasing, and then seeing it written. Then I could take a little bit of more spaciousness, a little bit of perspective, and seeing. Oh, you're looking, you climb the mountain, and then the climbing was quite hard, and then you can see, all the paths you did, and you have a bigger, larger view. So yeah, like that.
And I think the challenge, and maybe you could speak a little bit more about accompanying Sister Lanyum also in the difficult moments, because I think many of us, when our loved ones suffer, we can feel very helpless to know what to do, whether we're close to them physically or we can only be in touch with them by phone or by Zoom, and either whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, and how we can somehow find a way. At least for me, I definitely breathe, and I find ways to try and release the tension that's there in the breathing, because sometimes I find like an echo of the other person's suffering in my own breathing. And then I find that when I'm able to release that tension in my own breath, and somehow, I even use the word like allow, allow their suffering to be, because I think sometimes I rush to wanting to fix it or remove it, but how to allow that suffering to be, and using our physical presence. And I wonder if you could share a bit, because I know you offered an incredible support to Sister Lanyum these last few weeks.
Yeah, it was. It was my priority to offer my care and presence. So in my heart, I really wanted to offer a true presence. That's mean like offering myself. Not putting myself first, but putting Sister Lanyum first, whatever she needed to be present for her. So this was like an aspiration, to really care and be present. At some point, and I felt quite powerless in what could we do to help her, and we had the chance that we were able to keep her at the monastery, because I know nowadays it's very difficult. A lot of people are alone and dying alone in the hospital room. So it was really one of our aspiration of her attendant and myself, and then our blood sisters, which at the beginning was not so easy for them, but then they understood that how important, what we wanted to be, to do everything we could so she could stay in a room in the monastery, surrounded by the love of the community and the care of the community. So for sure, at some point it was challenging, because then we are not medical doctor, and I tried to find some doctor all around who could come to visit her, and was not possible. So, and then felt a bit quite, what shall we do? What shall we do? And really, how the practice really helped me to, quiet down and then share, be able to communicate my feeling of powerlessness with some other sisters, and looking together. Okay, and I have this image of our teacher when he was in Singapore, and with the boat people, and Thai didn't know what to do, and then he practiced walking meditation and just breathing, and that's what I did. I practiced walking meditation and really slowing down my thought, and then I say, okay, I call the doctor and see maybe there is a solution, and then we could have the hospitalisation à domicile. It's like the caring system could come at home. So we had nurses coming and doctor, and then this was very. It helped a lot. But then what was to accompany her throughout the different processes of her refusing to her suffering, the suffering of her body, and her confusion, accepting that her confusion. But then after, to be witnessing all her process of letting go, And this gave us, our attendant and myself, a lot of energy. Often people were saying, "Oh, you must be tired," but in fact, it was such a powerful process to see her how she went through all, coming closer to death and accepting. At the beginning, she didn't accept at all. It was like completely denying. But then it was this beautiful process of slowly going, the body transforming and preparing our body and mind, preparing for death. So it was a journey that we did together. So in fact, it was it gave us a lot of energy, and she led very, very peacefully. And very, very peacefully, which was, very wonderful. So I don't know if there is more.
Can I ask you something very personal?
I don't know. You can always ask. I don't know if I answer, but.
So what healing? I mean, I feel there's been a real opening and a healing in you through this process, and I wonder, maybe it's too early to say, but I wonder what you feel has been healed or opened or touched in you through this experience.
But what was touching me is because, in fact, what touched me the most in Thai's teaching, in our teacher, was the suffering of the suffering, the physical suffering and the mind suffering, and the death. And I found in Thai's teaching open in me the understanding about suffering and death, because I lost a lot of my beloved one, parents, brother, sister, friends, close friends, many people around me, and I could see like a process in myself, and I know in my own personal journey I had a lot of regrets because I couldn't accompany my mother when she passed away. I was with her the last 2 weeks of her life, but I was living in the States and she was living in France, and I was not enough with her, and so like I could see that within myself it was a healing as well, offering my true presence to Sister Lanyim. So I could see like even for other closed one, that I couldn't always be with them all the time, but through her, I really, but what I wanted to share is like, because I'm older, I don't know this word, as I'm older, and I really realize the most precious gift that we have is to be together. For me, the rest is just a game. But the relationship that we have with each other is the most important thing, is really the priority. So it's like how to communicate together, how to be close to each other, how to understand each other, how to bring compassion and love in our relationship. For me, is the most important things, and that's why and I feel that. Our sister, she really received this love from the community, and because of this love, she was able to go through the process of entering into death, into this transformation, this the end of this physical manifestation, and continue our voyage in peace, and really surrendered by love. And so for me was most wonderful gift that we can offer each other. So that's why I'm happy to live in the community, because then, okay, maybe we'll have the chance to be surrendered like that at the moment of this transition. But so for me was was like what really touched me the most deeply in Thai's teaching is Thai's teaching about no birth, no death, but how to live deeply in the present moment, how to say, I am here for you, and I know you suffer, and I'm here for you, and I know you are there, and I'm very happy, but really to feel that, and to really be it, yeah. So that, yeah, voilà. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear sister. Brother Bieu, would you like to add anything to what you have shared already? I'm just going to look meaningfully at Joe and Joe, is there anything? Sorry? Would you like to say anything that we should address a little bit? Yes, please.
Yes,
yeah, I have a question, which was one of the main focuses of the retreat was around discrimination, and around discrimination in ourselves and the discrimination we see in the world. And so I was just wondering how the three of you, whether you'd had any insights around the discrimination you may have in your lives, but also how we address the discrimination that we're seeing increasingly in the world with this separation of people leaving the common ground and going to polarities. So discrimination is getting worse. What have you learned about that, and how do we start to heal it?
Okay, I go first. So in my personal practice, this autumn, I realized that I'm not so good at accepting situations I don't like, and I think that's a kind of discrimination. That honestly, I'm kind of like, I have likes and dislikes. I am not equanimous. I'm not equanimous, and it's funny because when it affects my practice. So a situation happens and I'm less peaceful, for example, or I'm more busy, I have more problems to solve, or the things that I want to do I'm not able to do. Maybe I don't have, for example, free time or something. It affects my practice and I get less happy or I feel less free. And I feel somehow a victim of the situation because it's not the situation that I would choose. And this became a bit of a koan for me because I thought, oh, well, do I only practice when it's a situation I can choose? That's not a very strong practice. And then I also thought, I think we all have our ideals about Plum Village, right? And I had this question, it's like, is Plum Village still the Pure Land that it was when I first came here and Thai was here and I had nothing to worry about because I was either, wasn't in a position of having to carry anything in terms of any responsibility, except for being on time for pot washing and cleaning. Is Plum Village still that Pure Land? So right away you have this like discrimination, like what makes a Pure Land, and it's really became my koan this autumn. It's like, well, if I'm not sort of doing things of my choice, or situations are not situations I like, or I'm hearing things I don't want to hear, or witnessing things I don't want to witness, whether at any level in my own family or in society or with those I live with, does that make it any less of a Pure Land? Or, does this make me more of a victim? And I thought a lot about it because I've also been looking deeply into Thai's life and researching some aspects of Thai's life on behalf of the community. And what just really gets me is that, I mean, Thai developed all these practices in the most challenging situations. And I don't think we are yet encountering anything on a patch on what Thai was himself facing in terms of polarization, in terms of discord and turbulence in the country where he was living, in terms of the violence that everyone was exposed to in the 50s and 60s in Vietnam. And then also the deep sorrow that Thai faced, especially in the early years of exile. And that is the soil in which Thai built all of these practices of touching happiness in the present moment and accepting himself and accepting things as they were and seeing the beauties in the world. And some of Thai's most beautiful poems have come out at that kind of time. And so I've kind of held this really in the front of my mind that I shouldn't discriminate between, conditions, like perfect conditions and imperfect conditions. And that, I mean, especially for those of us of like, I was going to say the young generation. I'm not sure I get to call myself young generation anymore, but youngish. Hopefully having a few decades ahead, Do I think that the conditions are going to get better in the future? I don't think they will. If anything, they may get more challenging. And so actually this is a kind of training ground already, 2020, and what 2020 has given us is a kind of training ground for what lies ahead. And can I train myself to touch freedom in any given moment? I was telling a sister yesterday that I have a mantra when I step out of the area where I do Sangha work and I walk either to the meditation hall or the dining hall. I have a mantra that I say to myself, which is, can I walk in freedom? Can I walk as a free person from here to there? No matter what's going on. And so at the beginning, when I was sharing a bit about how we can find our sovereignty in difficult situations, that's my practice, to not discriminate and say, oh, it's only in that kind of situation that I can find freedom or I can touch peace or happiness. And the sunset is no less beautiful in 2020 than it was in the year 2000. And the moon is no less beautiful. And can we see that and let it in, just as our ancestors enjoyed the sunset and the moon? And another aspect of discrimination that has really landed for me is that we all have different ways to experience things. And that may lead us to have different values, right? Or hopes or dreams. And I think I'm starting to realize that it's possible to allow one another to have different hopes and dreams or different values because we experience the world differently, and we may hope for different things out of it. And I think that's important for the point of polarization and discrimination out there in the world, because it's like we can't tolerate someone else's ideals being different. And I think also what I find helpful is getting to the root of the ideals rather than the outward manifestation. So it might mean, you want this kind of, laws or taxation or budgeting where the resources go, right? And don't think this doesn't happen in the monastery. In the monastery we also have rules, budgets, and decisions about where the money goes, right? So, but at root we're all, everyone is trying their best to fulfill what they feel are their most important values. And I think where we can find the meeting, where we can bridge the gap, and where we can find the human solidarity across difference, is when we can really get down as far as possible to what lies behind those things. You know, what kind of country do we want to build? What kind of community do we want to build? What kind of conditions or generosity do we want to create for each other? And how do we express that? But somehow like allowing each other to have really different ways of expressing that and ways of experiencing that. And I think for me that's something that in the microcosm of the community I've really touched this autumn, and that's helped me understand a bit how we can approach it in the world. That was a long answer, my apologies. I wonder if Sister Daniel, Brother Fabiu?
Yeah, for me, what helped me is to not discriminate, like, and try always take the example of the mud and the lotus, which I found a very good example. For example, is if I have a difficulty or conflicts, and to see always with the eyes of the practice, that in fact is going to help me to understand. And for example, I'm part of a group which is called White Awareness. And in this group there is some documentaries that we watch, and recently I watched a documentary of men who were part of like pro-Nazi Nazi and violent against, like, with racism and like you know, killing or being very violent, and their change of mind by realizing their humanity and what was happening for them, and so they completely changed, and so now they are helping other people who were part of these groups, very violent groups, especially in the States, to transform, to understand themselves, to come back to their humanity and what really deep down inside of themselves, what they are, and so it's been so for me is to come back to this the priority. What is our priority in life? Do we recognize each one of us as a human being with their suffering, and not to discriminate? This is a bad person, and this is a good person, and and linked to, and I want to mention that it may be a little bit aside from discrimination, but because sometimes we say, okay, may I accept things as they are, and often when we say that, and often because I say, and then people say that I cannot accept everything, and which is true. It's not we accept things, okay, things are like that in the moment, and then, but I'm not a victim of the situation. I have to come back to my own island, my sovereignty, and then from that on, then we know what we can do. We have the clarity to know, okay, I can have this action and do that. And I see for the discrimination, if I can accept, yes, I'm discriminating, or whatever situation. I'm suffering, and if I don't want to suffer, I'm discriminating the mud. And so it's like that, yeah. Anyway, but I'm sure Fabiu can share something too.
Dear community, thank you, Joe, for bringing a question back to the topic of this retreat. I've been reflecting a little bit throughout the course of the retreat, because I was kind of withholding at some point, at the beginning of the retreat, the feeling of, that I haven't really witnessed so much discrimination in my life, and I realized actually how that isn't true. And I've been really reflecting on what discrimination is, and I believe that if we take the if we look at the teaching and if we look at our experience in the practice, discrimination is primarily a problem of perception. One time Thai picked up a leaf, very beautiful leaf, and he said, to think that this is a leaf is the original sin. I like that quote somehow. To think that this leaf is a leaf. It means there is a leaf, there is me, and there is a separation between the two of us. And that is really the root cause of what, then scales out to a lot of violence, to a lot of suffering in society. I feel if we bring it one step up, discrimination is a matter of language, the way we speak. And at that level, there's still a lot of discrimination in all of our life. In our community also, we discriminate a lot. And that is because language is supposed to discriminate. If language doesn't discriminate, we cannot understand each other. But then there is the risk within that. I mean, language is a pretty handy tool, right? It'd be very hard for somebody to say something, for you to ask me a question, or for anybody to do anything without it. But then we can use it in very clumsy ways. So in our community, of course, we have different cultures, but sometimes we hear, the Western people, the Western brothers, right? And we say that. Or sometimes we say, the Vietnamese brothers are like this, or like that. And we might praise, and we say, the Vietnamese brothers are so lovely, right? Or sometimes we say, the lay people are such wonderful gift, in this community. Or we say, the elder brothers, Sometimes we say, the sisters are like this, And the conversation, And I'm sure you never say, the brothers are like that. Anyway, this is just saying, this is something I do. I'm not pointing any fingers, because there's actually no other way to convey meaning and to convey experiences. But my sense over these years is that every time we use such a word, every time I say, the Western brothers, or the Vietnamese brother, or the novices, I train myself to feel like I'm chewing on a garlic clove. It shouldn't feel right. There's something that should feel very clumsy and imprecise about it. Because the risk is to hurt many more people than we actually want to get to. If we have a problem with one elder brother, then it's better for us to go to that elder brother and resolve that problem with him. Because once we say the elder brothers, boom, 20 people, and we ruin our perception of them. So language also messes with the way we perceive reality after that. It's kind of an exchange that goes back and forth. And suddenly, I found myself in the community feeling I don't like anybody. I found myself in that space. Like maybe a couple of people, a couple of my friends, but then I developed this reaction. And once I started digging, in the end, what brought me back to a feeling of joy and ease and well-being is beginning anew with one person. Start digging. It was my problem with you. And slowly it infected my whole perception of the whole community. That is a very fascinating thing that we see happening within our mind, and it's very powerful. And there are also very interesting objects that sometimes we can discriminate against. Sometimes we are in the Sangha, or I think outside also we do this with our country sometimes, and we say, the community is like this. That is a very fascinating one, because we are discriminating everybody and nobody at the same time. So it becomes a very handy object for us to project our whole subconscious on it, and any evil thing, anything that we have inside, then is projected on that. And actually, if we know how to use that, that is an extremely powerful tool for practice. Sometimes I teach that also to people outside, is that when you look at the news, when you think of your country, you really should see yourself in it, see your subconscious in it. Because those news website and the picture we make ourselves of, of our government, of our country, is really a handy way to project, what we have inside our subconscious content, and it's out there. And once it's out there, we can actually see it if we are a good practitioner. If we have some concentration, some meditation, and stability, suddenly we can see it manifest, and we can smile to it, and we can say, "Oh, okay. Of course, there is a person there, and sometimes it's quite crazy, as some president, some prime minister, some this and that. But there is part of me in him, and actually, what I fear the most is what comes from within. Is my past, is my story, projected and attached to that person. The boxes the sister was sharing before. So this is really a very powerful part of my practice. This is something that hurts me also a lot, I see, when we speak. Because for my story, for my upbringing in the community, I had the condition to be on both sides. I spent a very long time in Asia. And at some point, also the Asian community, for example, was my main support in the Sangha and in my monastic life. And I found myself, when I came back, I found myself in between. I see that sometimes when we share, we say, the Asian people are like that. And then sometime I'm on the other side and they say, Western people are like that. And what I see as engaged practice for me is to be able to smile at that point and to be accepted in both environments and to deliver some information that people just don't know. Because there are actually informations about people's well-being, about people's emotion, that wipe away all of that discrimination. Discrimination is only handy when you don't think there's a person on the other side. The moment he's a human being, boom, it's a human being. And then it's a different ball game. It's totally different thing. So I feel the reason why it's so risky is that it's such a handy and energy-saving principle in our consciousness. From one experience, by discriminating correctly, you can apply and you can understand a whole range of phenomena around yourself. Of course, I say this is a leaf, right? This is a flower. But that allows me to go out there and see millions of flowers and different species. And if I'm smart, I will see the beauty in it. I say, that's so beautiful, so much diversity, and every flower is different. If I'm not so smart, then I think, these are not my flowers. These are wrong flowers, dandelions, let's just spray them and get rid of them because they have pollen, things like that, And that's the way we think. That's the way our mind functions. And anyway, I don't want to go much longer on this, but I feel this is a very important aspect of our community. And every time we point our finger at somebody or something, we should really be careful if we don't see the person behind it, and we don't touch the emotion and the suffering, and especially with wide concepts like the brothers, or the novices, the sisters, the lay people. We have to say it. We cannot take them out of our vocab and suddenly start speaking like I don't know what, and people back home, they don't understand what we're talking about in our Dharma talks. But we have to really chew these words as if they were a clove of garlic. It's like, okay, sometimes I say, my Vietnamese brothers, but I will be very careful of the emotional content I project on that distinction. Because if I'm not aware of it, I might put some rejection, or I might put some attachment, or I might put something else that doesn't belong to them. They don't need to have it. It's mine. I need to own it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, dear brother and sister. And I think for this topic of discrimination or non-discrimination, I think we still have a lot to explore. And we've reflected a bit on the internal experience here in the community as a Sangha. And there's still a lot of deep looking to do to understand its manifestation in the world and also in systems and structures, and what would be Buddhist insights or engaged Buddhist insights into the kind of change that we could help manifest in the world in terms of systemic change, to recognize that there can also be, as well as the roots of discrimination in consciousness, also the roots of discrimination in the kind of structures that we belong to and are part of and are supporting in the world. So hopefully we will continue to go deeper into this in the year 2021. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening to us this morning. Thank you for your compassion as our Sanghas, as we do our Sangha-ing. And we wish you a wonderful last 2 weeks of 10 days of the Rains Retreat. And for everyone at home, we also wish you a wonderful time as the days get shorter and the nights get colder. Thank you so much.